So,
Awesome.
Matt, thank you for joining us to tell us more of your journey, because we believe that through other people's stories, it gives other people who are struggling hope. So, we appreciate you joining us to share your My Recovery story.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, one of the questions I like to start with, and I think this helps us encapsulate your experience and your journey, is I always ask people, what is one word that you would use to describe your recovery journey from when you were struggling to where you are today? If there was a word.
It's it's a tough question to answer. There's so many words that come to mind. I would have to say learning would be the word. There was a lot of learning that went on from, you know, the time I was struggling till today, right? Learning what alcoholism is. I think we all have this popular culture understanding of addiction, or a view of what addiction looks like. And I think if you don't fit into that box, or you don't fit into the picture that you've created of what an alcoholic looks like or what an addict looks like, when somebody mentions to you, you might have a problem with drugs or alcohol. If you don't match up to your box, then how could you? And so really learning about what alcoholism is, and what addiction is, and how that exposed itself in my life prior to today. And then, just the countless learnings that you go through on the recovery journey. I mean, we could go for 2 hours if you really wanted to, but learning would be the word.
I think that's good, because that shows it's a journey. You never stop learning, right? And I
Never.
think as you're in recovery, you're learning new things. You're learning more about yourself. But I think one thing that you said that really touched me, that was really impactful, is that we have this image of what addiction looks like, or what someone who's struggling with alcohol looks like. What was your picture of what that looked like versus why you didn't think you fit into that early on?
Sure. So my picture, I grew up in Greater Boston. We took the subway a lot. I lived in a suburb just outside of downtown. So we'd take the subway in to go to, let's say, a Red Sox game. And you get off the train trolley and you come up to the street level. And you've got guys who are, maybe drinking out of brown bags, asking for change, maybe a little uneasy on their feet. That was one image of what I thought alcoholic was. Then you also had, we call them barflies, right? Your town barflies. Every town has a Legion or a VFW, or the local watering hole. And you'd go in there, and every time you're in there, you see the same three guys or whoever sitting in there, and you're like, yeah. Funny, every time I'm in here 4 times a year, but these 4 guys are always here every time. They got a problem, not me. I'm not canning down in Kenmore Square looking for some change, trying to get a beer. I graduated from college. I played college sports. I had internships. I got jobs right out of college. I kept jobs. I had a condo. I had a car. I've got a bunch of nieces and nephews. I got them birthday presents, Christmas presents, baptism, first communion. My mother needed a hand. I'd get over there and do it. Not always, but I'd get over there as often as I could to do it. And I tried to show up as much as I could, or as much as I was able. And to me, I was like, look, I'm taking care of my responsibilities. So what if I get drunk? It's not hurting you. Just let me be. I'm going to have a time, and that's it.
So, when was the first time that you admitted to yourself that maybe you have a problem?
Well, contradictory to what I just said, it's probably pretty early. It was probably in high school, probably early college. There were brownouts blackouts early on, and I just kind of knew. I was like, I don't know that alcohol and I really have the best relationship. Sometimes some stupid things happen when I drink, maybe a bit too much, but at the time, that was a byproduct of the drinking. It wasn't that I had an issue. It was like, hey, this is what happens when you do drink a lot. Because we looked at it it was almost like a sport in Massachusetts. Like, how much could you drink? If somebody was throwing a keg party, how long could you do a keg stand for? How good were you at flip cup? How good were you at beer pong? Those were all, I'm competitive by nature. So anything with a challenge, I'll outdo you on that, that's kind of where it started for me, knowing like, I don't think we're going to have a good relationship, but I'm going to have to figure it out. I'm going to have to figure out how to manage alcohol,
Which I think is the case for a lot of people, that it's a hard wake up call for people to say, hey, they may realize like, oh, when I drink, I may get drunk or things like that. But it's really hard for a lot of people to say, I'm really struggling here. Was there a rock bottom moment for you that was
No,
the turning point to like, I've got to change? Or
not necessarily. Thankfully, there could have been multiple ones. My drinking and, to call it, spasms of sobriety, were all based on little rock bottoms, nothing major. I mean, there was one major one, which was driving under the influence. And thankfully I didn't injure myself or anybody else. But that was a wake-up call that put my pause. What would happen is I'd run into, we call them signposts, right? There's your sign. I'd run into a signpost and I'd stop for a period of time. But back to that definition of an alcoholic, to me, that's somebody who needs alcohol every day. So when I was able to stop drinking for 3 months or give it up for 6 months because I had done something dumb, well, therefore, by my reasoning, I'm not an alcoholic because they need it every day. I haven't had a drink for 10 weeks. I can have a drink. And lo and behold, I'd have that drink and nothing bad would happen that night, which gave me the courage to go, a couple days later, have 2 drinks. And it was always the same. Within maybe 2 months, I was kind of back to drinking 4 to 7 nights a week. Those episodes got shorter till I ran into the next signpost. Then I'd take more time off, the culmination for me to make the change was I got some information that I didn't like one day. And I was sitting on my back steps. I smoked at the time. I had a cigarette and a Coors Light. And I looked at the Coors Light can and I said, this thing is always around every time. Anytime I do something dumb or I'm the recipient of some sort of bad news, alcohol is involved. Something has to change. I didn't know what that something was. When I called my friend who was a few years sober at the time, I was just calling him to help clean up what was the current mess, the mess du jour, right? And we spoke for a while, and he gave me some guidance, and that was really the start of it.
Mm-hmm. So what was it in that conversation with your friend that helped you the most?
He asked me it didn't help me the most then. It helped me the most later. But he asked me if I was willing to do anything. He said, "Are you willing to do anything?" I said, "Anything except this." And I had been to treatment 4 times, and I wasn't necessarily in the need of detox at that time, or at least maybe I was, but I don't know. And I said, "Yeah, anything except going back to a treatment center at this point." And he said, "Okay, I can work with that." And he gave me a list of things to do. He said, "I need you to call this therapist, primary therapist. I need you to call this recovery coach. And I need you to meet me at this meeting." And I said, "Meeting?" He said, "Yeah, it's Wednesday nights, young people's meeting." I said, whoa, like an AA meeting?" He says, "Yeah, like an AA meeting." I said, "Mike, I've been to those before. I don't know that I need that." And he said, "You just said you were willing to do anything." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "So shut up and meet me at the meeting." And I said, "Okay." And then that, every time I was asked to do something that I wasn't comfortable with doing or didn't want to do, whether it's just mainly because I was uncomfortable with it. Like, I didn't know what it was. He's like, "You said you'd do anything. You said you'd do anything." And that one phrase, or suggestion, was what led me to keep taking the chances. They weren't even chances. You know what I mean? It was more like me letting my ego deflate, thinking that I know everything, so I don't need to learn from you, and I don't need to listen to you, and you can't possibly know what's going on with me. There's no way you can help me. That one thing just opened the door to, again, back to the first word, learning, right? It was a
So you
gateway.
open. I think that's huge that you said you got to a point where you're like, "I'll do anything." Like, you got to that point. But I think what was interesting about your journey is that there was a point that you sought treatment, you said. So
Yes.
when did that happen in the journey? Because I know you said you started out, you go through high school, college, you kind of realize, something's going on here. My relationship with alcohol maybe isn't the best, but I can control this, right? Then you keep having these little rock bottoms, as you call them, little signposts along the way. So how did treatment come into the play throughout the journey?
So I sought treatment to avoid work consequences. Um, the day that, the Sunday that Tom Brady broke his knee versus the Kansas City Chiefs, I was down at Foxborough Stadium with 40 of my friends from the Elks on a bus. And as you can imagine, we were having a great day. We got back to Somerville. I was in a bar and went home. Did nothing crazy. But I woke up 15 minutes before I had to be in work, which was a half an hour away. And that was August of 08, or early September of 08. My father had passed away in May of 08. He had struggled with alcoholism for a long time, and it finally caught up with him, the effects of it. And I called that the summer of Matt. It was kind of carefree, and whether I was in mourning, I was certainly in mourning and sad, or just kind of didn't care that summer. So I'd been late a lot to work, and I was on what you would call double secret probation with work. And I said, "Look, great employee, but this is whatever's going on isn't, suiting you well. Got to be on your best behavior." And I said, "Okay, yeah, no, I will." And I knew this was going to be the straw that broke the camel's back. But I said, "You know what? they probably can't can me if it's for something medical. And this is clearly like I was plastered to my bed that morning and I'm in pain, hungover. And I just said, that's it. I'm going to detox. That's it. This is alcoholically driven why I am stuck in bed right now and not getting up. So that's what started it. I did detox. I did outpatient after doing detox. I completed all of that, and then I got back into that mindset of I haven't had a drink for 9 months. Like maybe those other people in the detox were alcoholic. Maybe those other people at the outpatient program were alcoholic. Not me. I'm at work every day. I actually just got a raise and I got a promotion in position. Alcoholics don't get raises and promotions and positions, so I can have a beer. It's really that simple. And then maybe about a year after that, I went to outpatient again as well, to get ahead of like what I saw coming, and that worked. I'll call that my harm reduction phase. At least if I was going to IOP 3 nights a week, I wasn't going to be drinking 3 nights a week. And so it was like a buffer for me. And then after that, it just went right back to normal. Normal as in
the drinking.
Yeah. And then I went to the doctor. I had this other habit. I would go get my physical January 1st or in January of every year to prove to myself and to anybody who asked, like, I just went to the doctor. He says everything's fine. And so I went to the doctor and he called me. He's a family doctor. I've got 3 brothers and a sister. Both of my parents went to him. We all go to him. He knows the deal. And he says to me, what's going on with your blood work? Your numbers are ridiculous. What are you eating? What are you doing? And I tell him, eating pizza and subs. I'm in my late 20s, not really health conscious. Exercise wise, I'm playing pickup sports with buddies still. And we're going out for beers. And he goes, well, knock it off or tighten it up, get back in the gym, or I'm going to have to put you on some medications. Now, at 28, 29, an ex-athlete, I was like embarrassed. I'm like, who goes on cholesterol and blood pressure medications in their 30s? So I get back into the gym. I actually got another role in the company I was at that had me more mobile. He says, come back in 6 months and we'll do a checkup. And so from that January to say it was July, I had these weird physical symptoms. Like I had really dry throat, mouth. I was losing weight. I was sore all over my body. And I didn't know what it was. I attributed it to, getting back in the gym, being more mobile. The dry mouth I couldn't explain. Lo and behold, what I found out in July when I went for the follow-up, he sent me to an endocrinologist. I had come into type 1 diabetes. So it was the onset of the diabetes. And I remember the first thought when they told me at the endocrinologist that, like, look, you're in diabetic ketoacidosis. We have to get you down to the emergency room for stabilization. I even pushed back on that. I'm like, can't you guys just give me some of that insulin stuff and I'll go back to work? And they're like, it doesn't work quite like that. And I said, okay. So I went down there, and in the subsequent days, like learning that I was a type 1 diabetic, and it's recommended that diabetics don't drink alcohol. I thanked God that he made me a diabetic, so I didn't have to tell anybody I was an alcoholic. It was unbelievable. It was like, it was a gift. I thought it was a gift. So that helped me stop drinking until I got to the next summer. And my friends on the beach that I've known for years, everybody's drinking, having a good time, and it derailed me along the way at different points, but I always got back up. What's that common phrase? It's not whether you fall down, it's whether you get back up again. Well, that was my attitude with booze and everything else. I'd be damned if I was going to quit.
So you're like, I'm always getting back up. But I think what's so interesting is you have these different, like you said, you have these different critical moments in your life, but then you hit that moment where you're like, I'll do anything, besides go to treatment, I'll do anything. And that is your life-changing moment.
Yes.
Get you to the point you are today. What do you think was different this time compared to all of the other times that you had tried, or, whether it was going to outpatient treatment or different things like that? What was different?
I asked people who were successful, or who I looked at and saw them in successful recovery, for help. I asked them for help and for guidance. And I took advice on everything related to recovery.
Would you say you kind of surrendered in some way? Like you were like, I need help.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, without question. Like unwillingly too. Like I unwillingly surrendered, but I surrendered. There was a lot of stuff I didn't want to do or go through, because I'll be honest, I was better then. My ego was too big. I was too proud. Hubris was, my issue. And one of the phrases you hear is, your best thinking got you here, right? So my best thoughts and my best personal guidance kept running me into the same ditches over and over again.
Good one. Say that one again. That's so good. Best guidance got you here.
My best efforts and my best thoughts got me into this situation. They kept running me into the same ditches over and over. And so when I was finally able to step to the side of myself and say, all right, look, I don't know if you're right or wrong, but my thinking keeps getting me here. Let me see what you think. And another suggestion I got from somebody early on was, be open. Like, some of what you're going to hear isn't that good or impressive, and that's okay. Take what works for you, but be open to experiencing all of it. Take what works for you.
I love that. So looking back now, how many years do you have in recovery at this point?
In August 28th will be 11.
Wow.
11 years. So what's today? The 10th? July 10th? So we're like less than a month away from another cake.
Yes, when we're recording this interview, which I think is really powerful and shows that once you let go that I don't know everything in this, and just getting real help from other people as like guiding you in this process, you begin to be on the path and sticking to sobriety. Because before you'd had these bouts, but now you're almost at 11 years. So how would you describe the biggest benefit of being in recovery?
The biggest benefit of being in recovery is being able to be available to everyone, and to be available and to be present. When I say be available, like, all of my family members and friends can call me now. And they're going to get mad when they call on me. They can all ask me for help now, and not worry about me not showing up. A few years ago, my mother's sister, my aunt, passed away, and I got the call to help move things out of her apartment, clean up all of her belongings. And it's a chore nobody wants to do, right? And I felt so lucky to get called to do the chore that nobody wants to do, because I'm reliable, and that was such a good feeling. Like, yeah, of course, I don't want to move Auntie's old couch out to the, recycling area or whatever it was, but am I going to be able to help my mom and be available to the rest of my family there? And then just present. When I was in active alcoholism, there's a mental obsession with alcohol. Most mornings would start off with like the thought of, I'm never drinking again. Never. Then you get a greasy sandwich on your way to work and you're feeling a little bit better. And then the phone call comes in the afternoon. It's, hey, we're meeting at Tia's. We're meeting at the Black Rose. I got an extra ticket to the Celtics game. We're going to catch the Red Sox. You want to go? Yeah. And sure enough, by 4:30, 5 o'clock, there's a beer in your hand. And next thing you know, it's last call and you got to get on the train to get home before you got to take a cab. And then, once you start, for me, once I started, I didn't want to stop. And once I stopped, I didn't want to stay stopped. And I would think about it constantly. I'm reminded of a Christmas at my sister's. I have 13 nieces and nephews. And my sister lived a little bit west of Boston, maybe about a 45-minute ride. And I remember thinking, instead of like being present there at the party with my nieces and nephews and playing with the toys that they just opened, I'm thinking about, how many drinks can I have here before somebody says like, maybe you shouldn't drive? What do I have at my house? Who's working at Orleans tonight? Who's on the door? Who's on the bar? Are they cool with after hours? Like, everything other than being right there.
Being present. Mm-hmm.
Present. And there's countless examples of that with alcohol in my life, and being in, whether it's work at the end of the day, or, waking up and being hungover and feeling miserable. It robs so much. Never mind the time you're drunk, right? Because you're not really there anyway. You're in your own little fantasy world. It's just, it robs you of so much. That's what I found. I thought it was giving me joy and ecstasy. I didn't realize it's one of the biggest thieves on the planet.
I wonder too, growing up, because you mentioned that your father also died from alcoholism. Did you ever see him as having a problem and see yourself differently? Or I know you said, as you just were looking at it, I know you gave the examples of, you saw the homeless person or the guys who were closing down the bar or who were always there. but it also showed up in your family, as I know you mentioned. Did you realize that, or was that also hard to come to grips with?
I just didn't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Because my dad worked. He worked. We we had everything we needed. We didn't have everything we wanted, but we got everything we needed. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the dinner was on the table at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock every night. I had a lunch bag packed every day. Um, you know, could do everything. My dad was around on the weekend. Evenings and weekends. But to me, it wasn't. My parents ended up splitting up because of it. My dad lived in another, I don't know, from the time I was about 10. He lived in an apartment down the street. Um, but that wasn't, to me, that wasn't, it was because dad drinks too much. Not like dad's an alcoholic. And you don't understand relationships when you're a child.
Right, you're a kid. Mm-hmm.
I have trouble understanding them now as a, 40 something year old man, but like, you don't get what's going on, you know? And to me, no, like, dad did some not great things sometimes, but not in a like nefarious way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He was a great dad. But that was just it's how it was. You worked, came home, and you drank.
Mm-hmm.
You got up, you repeated it. You paid your bill. You get your paycheck, pay your bills. You know, that was just the way. Um, and culturally, like my dad was first generation Irish. So one of the bars I used to frequent was all Irish people, and that was like right off the boat. A lot of tradesmen. Um, that's how they unwound at the end of the day. They
Mm-hmm.
all go for a couple pints. Um, they talk about what's going on in their community, what jobs they're working, and it was it's a social thing.
Right.
Um, and so the way they describe an alcoholic in Irish terms is like, at least in the circles I was in, was like, oh, he's just down on his luck. Yeah.
Mm.
He's had a bit of misfortune, and so he's feeling it. You know, I always thought my grandparents on my dad's side, my grandfather died before I was born. I think he had some sort of, it was sudden. It was like a coronary event. Um, and then his mom died when I was like 9 or 10, and she contracted Alzheimer's. So from the time, she may not have had it when I was born, but from where my memory starts, I remember her calling me my brother's name and me getting upset. Um, and so my thought process about my dad was, well, he drinks because he's upset. He lost his parents, he lost his dad early, and then his mom was sick for years, and
Mm-hmm.
any excuse, and he works hard, and we get to go play sports, and he's stuck working, you know, and he worked for a shipping company, and they did a lot of holiday packages. So Thanksgiving, Christmas, extra work. And, my viewpoint of it was, yeah, you're entitled, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So what if you get a little drunk? That was just how it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand that. And I think that cultural component, and then, but now looking back and understanding it and being in recovery nearly 11 years, what do you think you need that keeps you sober now? Because I know it's hard, and a lot of people, when they're going through early recovery, they can't even see that far ahead. Like, how do you make it to 10 plus years, you know? So what would you say would be the things that have kept you in recovery that you need to maintain your sobriety?
Too many motorcycles.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So the things I needed and need, the things I need and need are community. I need other people in recovery. There's a phrase in the Alcoholics Anonymous book that talks about, we're all like passengers on a great freight liner before it's gonna go down. And when we get saved on the lifeboat, there's a feeling of congeniality, and everyone's happy and euphoric. And it's when you're in a community of people who've gone through what you've gone through and made it out to the other side, it's good to be amongst winners. Winners like to be with winners, right? And so when you put yourself into a sober community, in a recovery community, you learn new things. You're amongst people going through the same thing. You learn new things. You get the support that you need. If there's 20 guys at a meeting, somebody's been through what I'm going through right now, or a situation, and they know how to handle it. And all I have to do is bring it up. And I get 15 opinions, and one of them's going to resonate with me. And you know what? That's probably the best play. So that, having the community, and then being, I'd say on a daily basis, is being able to be of service. And I don't just look at it from a AA or recovery service side of things. I look at it from like everything from like, I try to smile in the grocery store. Like, I don't know who's in the grocery store, but I'm usually hangry and I can't remember what I want, or trying to think of whatever recipe I'm making. I just try to remember to smile. You see somebody struggling pushing a cart, help them out. Pick up that piece of paper. In the winters in New England, we get snow. So I'll be out shoveling my driveway. I have a older woman who lives next door. She always ends up coming out when I'm out there. And once I finish my driveway, I got to go help her, and she insists, oh, no, I have it. I'm like, okay.
The timing is impeccable.
Yeah, your timing. Every time it snows and I start shoveling, you start shoveling. So it just that, and being able to show up for my friends and my family at different events in life. Like I said, I have 13 nieces and nephews. So there was 3 graduations this past month. My godson's plays lacrosse at a college up in New Hampshire, and they went through to the championship game of the Division II lacrosse. Getting to go to that stuff, like those. That's why I'm sober, so I can do that stuff, and I can be there for the people in my life. That's what I need, that community, and then just being able to be there. Like, I don't know. Nothing. What I found was that it's my feelings, thoughts, and emotions, right? That's what drives me to drink, and the fear and the panic. And having gone through a whole process to get through that, um, anything is possible now, right?
Mm.
Um, that was the hardest thing to ever do. And so I there's just so much more life on this side, and I'm going off topic, but it's that community and um, just being able to be there for people, you know.
I think those are two really big things because they do hold you accountable and let you know you're not alone. And then you also now work in addiction treatment. So you have another reason, I can only imagine, to stay on this journey because you see people every day or come in contact with people who are where you may have been. And now you're the lifeline, right? You're the person that's able
Tell
to say, hey, here's the first step. So what does it feel like now to see others and be able to reach back? I know you said, that acts of service are big, but now also having the ability to be the hand or hold out the hand like that friend did for you when you called and said, I would do anything.
Yeah, it feels awesome. It's literally the coolest thing. Um, you know, it's work. It is work for sure, and the calls come when the calls come. Um, but the reward, it's um, it's it's what keeps you going every day. I had a recent situation where a friend's stepmother's son um, was going through it, 26-year-old. Um, and, you know, I, I went to go see him in the hospital. I recommended a course of action. I do what I do with the families and the mothers. Like, there's a big education piece that you give. No one, moms and dads, and boyfriends and girlfriends, and husbands and wives, and children. There's no, you learn a lot of stuff as you're growing up. There is no, how to handle addiction 101. You know what I mean? What do you do if your boyfriend or girlfriend ends up in the hospital because of drinking too much, or your son or your daughter? And that's where the fun of it is, because I get to teach. I teach and or educate um, people about what's going on, and then to the guy in the bed or the girl in the bed with the situation, I've been in your bed. Like, you can't tell me anything I don't already know. Um, and it's a lot of fun to relate with them. Um, when you say something to them that they know that you would only know that if you had gone through this, or say it in a way that their lights go off, like, oh, you understand. Like, yeah. Um, that's such a reward. And with that situation, you get these silent texts a couple weeks later, that come through. Hey, thank you so much.
Mm.
And those bits hit all the time, and the random thank you notes. And I've been doing this close to 10 years, working in this field. And you, um, I mean, there's cases that I've worked with for 10 years, right? That just are on this journey. And, there's people who call. I had a guy call last week who I had to look back through text messages. I don't delete anything. Um, I didn't talk to him and I don't know how long. And he called me, and I thought it was a pocket dial, but I called him back. And I said, Larry, you're so and so's brother? Yeah, it was pocket dial. I meant to call another Matt. I said, oh, okay. How's your son? It was your son, right? And he goes, wow, thanks for asking. Yeah, he's doing this. And, it's stuff like that you just, you look forward to, you really like. Um, I don't know. It's one of the things we say is do the next right thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it comes back. I don't know. It's it's one of those careers like, I didn't go to school to do this. I didn't want to be a alcohol treatment, drug treatment guy. Um, but when I'm in the middle of it, I'm like, how could I do anything else? You know, um, it's just a lot of fun to see the people get started, talk them through the chaos, um, and it's awesome to see them on the other side. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
And I think, you know, what I visualize is I visualize, like you said, everybody on this train, then everybody got into the lifeboat. So it's like you see another passenger on that train, and
yeah,
now you helped another passenger get onto that life raft,
yeah,
right? So that I think that visual you said was really powerful to think about it. Like there's a train that's going to a not a good end, and everybody you can get off the train and get onto this life raft, you know, their lives are going to be better. And I think that's a really powerful way to think of it. And I think as I wrap up this interview, I just have maybe two last questions for you. But one, what do you hope people learn from your story?
um, it's a great question. I hope they learn that they're not as smart as they think they are, and that recovery and changing your way of life is not the end. It's actually it's a new beginning. Um, there's a phrase, contempt prior to investigation. They say it's contempt prior to investigation that will stop somebody from being successful in a recovery journey, saying that they don't know. I know enough. No, I'm not going to look at that. There, won't take it. Just be open, um, and be open to learning. Be open to suggestions, um, and you know, stay connected. Stick with it. Stick with it. Keep getting back up.
Yep. Keep getting back up because you are proof that even though you went through these four different times, that it was that last time of saying, hey, I'm willing to do anything, that got you to where you are now. And now you're a beacon of hope for so many people because of your journey. So thank you so much for sharing your journey with me and with everyone who's going to listen. And I think the last question I would ask you is if there's somebody struggling out there. I know you kind of said what you hope you learn, but how would you give them hope? Because I think a lot of people, when you've gone through this or even tried before, or maybe you're in the early stages of recovery and you think, I can't do this, how do you give people hope? What do you think gave you hope? And what would you say to those individuals who feel hopeless?
I think you can give them assurance. Um, I know beyond a doubt that if you want to get sober and you don't want to live this way, you can and you will be successful. Um, I can guarantee it. If you're willing to do a few simple things, I can guarantee you will be successful. And I was in that spot. Um, I was hopeless. Um, and somebody guaranteed me that if I would go to any length and follow a few certain suggestions, that I could get a new life, or get to where I am now. That's what I'd share. That was not the best sentence structure out of me there, Joy. It's tough. There's so much.
But I think that was so good because it's like You're saying it's like you're giving them a guarantee, like if you will just stick with this, if you will just try this, that there's a guarantee that there's another side. And I think that's all people need to know, because a lot of times people think, well, that's you. Could this work for me? And I think you've seen it time and time again in your own life and in the lives of those that you've helped, is that there is a pathway out. You
Yeah.
know, there is a way to manage this disease. There is a way to have a new life. There is a way to be present in the moments that you want to be there for. There is a way. And you are proof. And you're like, hey, if I can do it, who didn't think it was 100% possible because I tried it 4 different times, it was. So I think that's a perfect message.
All right. Good.
Well, thank you again for sharing your story with us,
Thank
Matt.
you, Joy.